Are you struggling with writing quality requirement? Are you a business analyst or aspiring business analyst, or somebody who just wants to know more about writing requirement and satisfy your curiosity? Then this video is for you, as I'll be sharing what requirements are, how to write better requirement, and then I'll be sharing bonus tip at the end that would help you never get it wrong when it comes to writing quality requirement. My name is Noah. I'm a career coach with over 10 years experience working in tech. I've helped more than 2,000 plus tech professionals in the past 7 years and counting to earn six-figure salaries. You can check out my website thinkskills.com.au to learn more about no-code tech careers that you can explore that has generated six-figure salary for lots of people within 3 months. Now let's dive in on how to write better requirements. But before we start, for somebody who has no idea on what requirements are, I'm going to be explaining exactly what requirements are using real life example. So what are requirements, you may ask? Requirements are specification or representation of a need. But what does that mean? Let's take, for example, you are a bride or a groom and you're wanting to have a wedding ceremony. Yeah, there's a wedding ceremony coming up. So what do? You go to your designer and say, hey designer, please make me a perfect suit or a gown. Now, I want you to think about that for a second. What do you think the outcome of that will be? Yeah, exactly right. It's going to be a deviation for your expectation. You describe in detail what you want. For example, as a bride, you might say, I want a corset dress. I want the veil attached to it. I want the lace to be crystal white. I don't want the zipper to be obvious. And if you're the groom, you might say, hey, I want 3-piece suit. I want to imprint my initials, for style. I want color of the suit to be red, and you give your measurement. That is going into the details. That's what requirement is at its simplest form, because this information are specification of your need. You see what we mean when we say that requirements are specification or representation of your need. Your need is that wedding dress or wedding suit, and then you describe exactly what you need in terms of style and design. So those are your requirements. With that understanding of what requirements are, now let's dive into how we can actually write better requirements, which is the promise of this video. The first point I want you to know is to understand the problem. Now, a lot of business analysts in this space or aspiring business analysts struggle with this concept. So they say, hey Noah, I have this project starting, I'm tasked to write requirement, I don't even know where to start, right? Valid concern, but it stems from the fact that you don't actually understand the problem. Going back to the example of making a suit, the reason you are able to define exactly what you want, which are your requirements, is because you understand what you want from making a suit. You understand it in terms of this taste and style. But you may say, no, how do I understand this from a complex project environment? This is common for some new BAs or even experienced business analysts. So I'll give you a framework that would help you dive into gaining knowledge and understanding about the problem. So the first thing you want to do using the framework is to ask the question, why are we doing this? Right? You want to know what problem needs to be solved. You want to know the current ways of doing things. That would help you gain a lot of perspective into what needs to be done. The second thing, you want to know the objective. What do we want to achieve? What is the point? For example, you wanted to get a suit for the wedding. That's the objective. The next point is to understand the future state. Now, the future state is not just a wedding dress or a wedding suit. You gave specification, and that is the future state. That is what you expect as an outcome of this project, because making a suit or a gown can also be considered as a project. So you want to know, what do you get? What are the outcomes? Say you were given a task or a project to document requirement on a CRM, customer relationship management system. You might not be familiar about CRM, and that's speaking to the earlier point, where if you don't know what CRM is, how then do you document requirement for it? It will be extremely difficult. So first of all, you want to use that framework to question, why are we trying to implement a CRM system? What are we looking to achieve? Objective. What would then be the future state? What is the outcome, tangible outcome that we want to get out of this? Right? And then gaining those perspectives would really get you started in terms of even understanding and gathering information that will form part of your requirement. But the next thing I hear is, hey, no, how am I going to get this information? Which leads to the second point of identifying your stakeholders. So you need to know the people who will be affected, who will be influenced, or who are interested in your project. This is because they can make or break your project. You see, at the heart of every system, any task, any application are people. The people are your source of your requirement. You will speak to people who will be affected or influenced by this project to gain understanding of what they need, right? What problem they are solving. Going back to the first point, and what do we want to achieve from this project that we're writing requirement from? If you're able to get answers and clarity from that perspective, you will be able to deliver on writing good requirement. So it's important for you to actually identify your stakeholders, the people who will be affected, influenced, or have power or interest in your project. So you need to interview them, and we'll talk about some of the elicitation technique that you need to use to actually get information out of them. The system runs only because of the people. So it's important for you to identify your stakeholders. You may be wondering, how then do I identify stakeholders? I'll give you 4 techniques you can use. The first one is to review the organizational chart. So you want to look at the organogram of the organization to identify who will be using this system. In this case, for example, the CRM system, who's going to be using it? Who do I need to be speaking to in that department? Who are the people that are influencing this project? Who are the people that will be affected by it? Who are the people that have interest in it? You need to definitely use that information to then identify your stakeholder. The next thing is to brainstorm based on reviewing an organogram and how the organization is structured. Based on that information, you can then identify some stakeholders, or you can also consult some subject matter experts. So there will be different subject matter experts working in different parts of the organization. So you want to definitely engage with them to understand what their needs are, what they expect from your project or requirement. That way you're able to gather information. And the next point is to then develop a RACI chart. So basically a RACI chart is responsible, accountable, consult, inform. So basically you're trying to group your stakeholder in terms of who is responsible for what, who is accountable for what, who I need to consult, who I need to inform on different aspects of your project. Point number 3 is for you to use requirement elicitation method. You may be wondering, what is requirement elicitation technique or method? Requirement elicitation process in business analysis is aimed at gathering information and defining requirements from stakeholders and other sources. This is to ensure that there are clear understanding of the objective to facilitate documenting the requirement. Now, some of the requirement elicitation techniques are document analysis, reviewing existing system, interviews, workshops, surveys, brainstorming, and lots more. However, in my opinion, it is critical for you to use document analysis and researching or reviewing existing system type of elicitation technique first for you to gain a lot of insight about a subject matter or subject area that you're working on. For example, in the case of our CRM system, you can definitely review what CRM is, gaining understanding about CRM in general, how it works, how it's implemented, different type of CRM application out there. That is you researching and reviewing different sort of documentation. In similar light, you can also review existing system. You want to look at the different CRM system that has been implemented. You can also look at your competitors. What have they implemented? How are they using CRM? That would really give you a lot of insight and power, because I believe that the more information and knowledge you have, the more power you have. Then once you've actually acquired all of this information, gain broader perspective, you're gonna approach using other type of elicitation technique like interview from a place of authority and power rather than weakness. So you will go into your interview with a bit more preparation and be a one-on-one interview where you use a combination of open-ended or closed-ended question, to gain more insight about how you then implement the CRM in that particular project context. You can definitely ask questions like, what are your expectations from this CRM system? How is customer relationship management being done today? What system currently exists? What are their core features? All of this questioning would help you gain a lot of insight and information from the respective stakeholders that you've invited for interview, and will really help you gather enough information for you to refine and document better requirements. You can also use workshop. So with workshop, you get even more stakeholders in the room or virtual room, depending on the setting, and question them, set the objective again on what you're trying to do. You give them context on why you're even running this workshop, what you seek to achieve, how it currently works today in terms of understanding their current process, how it needs to work, defining your future state. Then you question and definitely engage with them, and you're able to leverage all their expertise and collect a lot of information that will definitely help you write better requirements. Another technique you can use is surveys. So if you don't want to run an interview or a workshop, you can definitely use surveys. We've all filled out in form of surveys or questionnaires at one point in our life. You definitely want to design some open-ended or closed-ended questions relating to you gaining more insight about the project. And surveys are really good because you can reach more stakeholders at once. You send it to them and then they fill it out. You can collect a lot of information from diverse stakeholders and reach more stakeholders within the shortest possible time. So once you're done using your different elicitation technique, you can agree with me that you already have a lot of information that you can definitely get started with in defining and refining your requirement, which will be a lot more better than you trying to figure it out all alone. The final point I'm going to talk about is documenting your requirement. So once you've understood the objective, you've understood the problem, you've identified the stakeholders and engaged with them, and you've gathered a lot of information through your engagement using different elicitation techniques, you can agree with me that you're already in a position of power to write better requirement, which is going to make your life easy as a business analyst. Trust me. So documentation is key. And your role as a business analyst is now to use your skills, your technique to definitely refine those information, right? So first thing you want to do is to ensure that you're writing smart requirement. So as a business analyst, you want to be documenting your requirement in a smart way. And this is very key because a lot of business analysts miss this out. So smart requirements are specific requirements, which means that you're specifying the exact outcome you want. For example, you want to make a white wedding gown. That is specific. So the S in the smart means specific. And this is where a lot of business analysts make mistake. They don't document smart requirements. I want to make a dress, I'm size 12, right? Definitely, you want to make that dress size 12. If it's different from size 12 when the designer returns it, you know that definitely that's not acceptable. You want it to be achievable. Definitely making a dress that is white and is size 12 is definitely achievable as a requirement. So you want to consider that. You want to consider that is relevant. So if I'm saying that I want a dress that can fly, obviously that is not relevant to the scope of what you're trying to do. But the size and the color in terms of that requirement definition is relevant. Then the next one is testable. We can definitely test if our dress is size 12 or if it is red color or white color, whatever color you specify as your requirement. So that requirement is definitely testable. So you want to write smart requirement when you're documenting or defining your requirement as a business analyst. Another factor business analysts must consider when documenting requirement is to make sure that it is clear and concise, using simple language that both technical and non-technical stakeholders can really understand. You see, like if there's disconnect in your interpretation and people can make assumptions and misinterpret your requirement, then it can jeopardize the success of a project. That is why you documenting your requirement in a simple way for people to really gain clarity and understand the expectation is extremely important for you as a business analyst. You also want to be brief yet detailed. And what I mean is you want to give as much information and context that would really provide that clarity that all stakeholders involved need to have, not to make the wrong assumption. But for example, as a user, you can definitely provide some prototype of how you want that suit to be or how you want the gown to be. That will really help the designer in great detail to exactly meet your requirement. So it's the same thing as a business analyst. You can provide mock-up, swim lanes, prototype, wireframes that would really give context to helping your designer, your stakeholders, deliver on the project objective. The next point I want to talk about is the power in you clarifying your requirement. So after documenting and refining your requirement, you want to make sure that you're clarifying or validating your requirement with the appropriate stakeholder. This is extremely important and another mistake that a lot of new business analysts make. You see, we don't have all the answers as a business analyst, and that is why you need to leverage the power of your stakeholders. They are experts in their different field. Your job as a business analyst is to engage with them to ensure that you're correct. So when you write that requirement, you've refined it, you need to go back and clarify and validate those requirements to be sure. And the last point, to my bonus point, I promise, that will help you always be correct and write better requirement, is to go through different iterations of validation and verification. So it's always important for you to verify your requirement and validate them as well. So you verify with your different stakeholders, you're showing them what you've documented and refined and ensuring that the correct information in terms of those requirements have been documented. They can give you feedback if something has been missed, and then that way, as you do that iterative feedback loop with your stakeholders, you're definitely going to always document quality requirement. Let me know if you'll be implementing any of these strategies in your next requirement gathering session. And if this video has been any value, please consider subscribing to this channel, like, share and comment. I would love to read from you. Now that you know some of the key considerations to help you write better requirement, then you should watch this next video where I show you example of what makes a good requirement. I will actually dive into writing some requirements